Joe Schwarz, McCain brags that his tax cuts are even deeper than Barack Obama's tax cuts. A long time ago, when I was a child, Republicans used to brag that they were the party of...
It was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. And I think John McCain and you were only middle-aged at the time.
That's right.
And I'll pay for that. In that halcyon era, Republicans used to brag with some reason that they were the party of fiscal responsibility, and I remember them criticizing Democratic presidents for having budget deficits of $20 billion a year. Why do more tax cuts make sense?
First, let's all understand where tax policy comes from. Tax policy comes from the Congress, specifically from the House Committee on Ways and Means. They write and originate all tax bills, all federal tax bills. Secondly, I cannot excuse either my party or the other party for their behavior the last 4 to 6 to 8 years in regard to tax policy, because nobody was running the numbers. Nobody cared, apparently. Thirdly, I don't think in the full daylight after the 20th of January 2009, you're going to see any tax cuts of any kind. You have international problems, $10 billion a month for Iraq and Afghanistan, and there's no end to that coming real soon, perhaps within the next couple of years. You have Medicare, which is the gorilla out there just waiting to pounce. The unfunded liability for Medicare, the future liability, is, depending upon which economist you talk to, but in the next 20 years could be as much as $30 trillion. That's with a T. $30 trillion. Other social programs, especially Medicaid, are going to grow and need to be funded. Social Security is fixable. Raise the cap and re-index, and you probably can get the job done. The problem is I don't know that there's a collective courage in Congress to do that. So it's good for a candidate to talk about tax policy, and I'm pleased that they do. But remember, there's going to be no change in tax policy, no cuts, no innovations, no increases without Congress being on board, and especially the House of Representatives, whence all tax policy comes.
Paul ISELY, you're a real economist. Please critique what you just heard.
Well, as they have their tax plans on the table and not counting in the auctioning off of the credits or the permits, which would change the numbers, we're looking at both changes in tax plans adding somewhere between $3 and $5 trillion to the debt over the next 8 years. So as they're sitting on the table, they're both pretty onerous. So,
Paul, how big a threat is inflation?
Inflation right now is a near zero threat, at least for the next 6 months, because we've seen commodity prices retrace to their pre-2008 levels. And in fact, last month the CPI was 0%. So we have a lot of latitude on inflation right now.
Mark COSCARELLI, you've seen, we've all seen, when money gets tight, spending on the environment is often the first thing to go, correct? How severe, we've heard a lot about invasive species, and nobody ever seems to do anything about it. Is there something that either the federal government or the state of Michigan should be doing right now or in January to stop new invasive species from coming into the Great Lakes?
Yes, and I think we're already seeing a lot of action at the state levels. I think after about 15 years of frustration by the states for the inability of the Coast Guard to embrace a mandate that they had to issue some discharge standards for ocean-going vessels. That's the primary vector by which these aquatic organisms make their way into the Great Lakes, salties, if you will, coming from abroad. And as they ballast and deballast their operations, biological material is discharged into the lakes. So after some time of frustration at the national level, for not being able to address this problem in a timely fashion and to reduce the risk to the Great Lakes, the states have now embarked on their own regulations, if you will, to regulate those foreign vessels. Michigan, under the leadership of Ken Sikkema, Senate Majority Leader, and then Patty Burkholz, pushed state legislation through to require a permit for ocean-going vessels. That was followed up by the state of Minnesota now, which is also looking to establish a discharge permitting program for the state of Minnesota.
But none of these are foolproof, are they?
No, that's correct. And I think the shipping interests are most concerned right now due to a patchwork quilt of regulations by the states. What we'd like to see, short of the federal government getting serious about reducing this risk, is to see a regional compact similar to the water compact that was just signed by the 8 states and agreed to by the 2 provinces, where it's a regional Great Lakes approach to addressing invasive species, kind of modeled after the recent passage of the Great Lakes Water Compact. And that provides a framework for the states to manage the water resources of the Great Lakes, diversions, and the like.
About 6 months ago, I had dinner with Senator Sikkema, who of course is from Grand Rapids area, and he said there's a real simple and foolproof way of dealing with, just put chlorine in the ballast tanks. Is that a bad idea?
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea. I think there's going to be a suite of solutions that will be necessary to address the discharge. The fact is that ballast water needs to be discharged at the point of exit to the Great Lakes. There's been a tremendous amount of research done on everything from chlorine to glutaraldehyde, UV, thermal treatment, hydrocyclones, any number of techniques, if you will. Biocides have been somewhat controversial. Chlorine doesn't work as well in ballast tanks because there's a high sediment load, and so that diminishes its effectiveness in that situation. All that to say, there has been a lot of research moving in that direction. Chlorine may be one of the tools in the toolbox, if you will, to address it. Some of the controversy surrounding chlorine goes back many years, and it's the C word in the Great Lakes for many people. And so as we've tried to reduce our reliance on chlorine, it just has been taboo from some constituencies to look at that seriously for ballast water treatment. The fact of the matter is, if you look at chlorine use now in the Great Lakes with respect to wastewater treatment, potable water supplies, the amount we'd be talking about to treat the vessel discharges is a fraction thereof. So,
my final question this first round goes to Dr. MAHAWILI. Everybody I've asked about the potential of wind power in Michigan gives me a different answer, often a vastly different answer. So how realistic is it that we can have a major amount of our energy needs met by the renewable energy power of wind?
All the studies that I've seen and carefully looked at, and like I said earlier, even if we divide the projected and studies of the wind offshore and some of it are onshore as well, I mean, you divide it by 10, because I'm an entrepreneur and engineer, to be realistic, we still have some 30 gigawatts of sort of potential energy available from wind energy. And I think, and because that's our natural resource, we have it, and we also have biomass in our state. It's real. The studies confirm that. Our RP has just passed at 10% by 2015. But what we really need is tied into not only the CO2 emission for the environment, the cap and trade, which both candidates talk about, and I can't wait for it to be passed, and I want to know when it can pass to be realistic, to usher in this new era of wind and renewable technology. But also, where's the capital is going to come to it? I mean, a question could be, where's the T-Boone Pickens who's going to come into Michigan and sort of launch that program?
Is it more expensive to do that than it is to do nuclear power?
That's a good question. I can tell you that the numbers I have is for wind technology, it's 4 to 4.5 times that of an equivalent kilowatt installed out of wind is compared to coal. And I would say nuclear is lower cost as well, attracts coal as well. But it's just a time factor, makes nuclear a much longer time than wind or than coal, of course.
In the year 2027, what percentage of our energy needs would you like to see come from wind?
I think if I were T. Boone Pickens, I would like to see at least 25% of that coming from wind, because we have the resource.